Well, I'm gonna get started here. Of course, I'm Joe Joncas. You know who I am, NJ7OK. I'm the key instructor in all of this. I'm the one who, because of Prudy, Smile Prudy, she last a few months ago said, "Are you going to teach a class, an extra? Because I want to learn." And at that time, I decided, yeah, I think I would probably like to do that. So this is the results. Anyway, I was much of my life, well, let's see, till I accepted Christ, I had a career every 3 years. I would start a career, learn it, do it really wonderful for the second year. And then the third year, I was in just absolute boredom. And so I'd move on and do something else. But after I accepted the Lord, I started working on boats. I did marine electrical work, and I did that for 7 years. And then I became the founder and director of Maritime Ministries Worldwide. And we help people with their boats to serve the Lord throughout the world, actually. And so eventually I ended up here in Newport. I tore my first radio apart when I was 5 years old. My grandfather caught me when I almost had it all the way put back together again. But I expected to find little men in it. And I opened it up, and of course there were tubes and capacitors, and I went, "What is this?" And I put it back together. I was a teenager before he said, "Now, Joey, I believe you." And anyway, so I've been a ham since 1966. So I've been in this for quite a long time. John, you want to go next?
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, and I think just about everybody here does, my name is John Moore. My call is KN4RTK. And unlike Joe, my history with ham radio is very short-lived. I got my ticket with technician in 2019 or 2018, late 2018, and got my general in 2019. And I've been sitting on general ever since then. But I got that in Tennessee. And so hence the 4 call sign. So prior to that, I was in aerospace for 30 years with a shuttle program. But my wife and I moved out here after living in Florida for 30 years and a brief stint in Tennessee for 2 years. We moved out here a year and a few months ago. And that's a pretty short autobiography, but there you have it. Glad to be here.
Why are you in amateur radio?
Oh, well, when I went to Tennessee, well, actually, I'll back up. My cousin used to have a boat, and we went sailing to the Bahamas, and he had the ability to do radio and send messages on his boat, and I thought that was really cool. That was back in 2005, I guess it was. So my interest in ham radio and in communications really grew recently compared to most of you. But fast forwarding to when I moved to Tennessee, I had a desire to get a ham radio, and I dropped by a local emergency unit and asked them if they knew of any place around that was doing anything with ham radio and anything that civilians could be involved in. And they said, "Yeah, we were just thinking about starting the club back up again, and because of your interest, we're going to go ahead and start the club back up." And we got involved with Skywarn, the Skywarn systems for early weather detection and warning. And shortly thereafter, I got my ticket and just started in ham radio then. So that's it.
Chuck?
Okay, I'm at the end of the table, so I'm assuming everybody can hear me.
Sounds good.
Because we're only using one microphone down there. So. Anyway, Chuck Gerttula, W7CRG. I'm currently the president of the Lincoln County Amateur Radio Club. That's not bragging, that just nobody else wanted to do it. So my interest in amateur radio goes back to 1960. And I know some of you aren't that old. Some of you probably weren't even thought of in 1960, but I got my novice license in high school, and I intended to carry it on and improve it when I went to Oregon State, and I was too intent to do college kinds of things like, well, we'll say taking classes. We'll say that.
Kind of a basic.
Yeah, well, I was.
That's not the only reason for college, you know.
I was one of those people who went from honor society to probation. And I worked at it. Anyway, so I kept an interest in electronics over the years, and I kept saying I was going to. I subscribed to 73 magazine and had them all.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah. But I'm saying is I had those, I built things, I was, everything but actually licensed and on the air. And then here a while ago, I don't know, one of Mike's classes hit the newspaper, and my wife said, "Oh, there's a class for ham radio." So I went over, took Mike's class, got my technician, went to general, and went to extra. And when I went to extra, I changed my call from the one that they assigned me, which was KF7 Whiskey Zulu Victor. And the reason I changed is pretty obvious. It's hard to say. I had a hat with that on, and a woman, Frank Meyer, said, "How do you pronounce that?" And I said, "Hopefully you don't have to." Anyway, that's it. I have spent 30 years in the Army. I came off active duty, and everything I loved about active duty, my wife hated, but she put up with the reserve time, which to me was harder to put up with than the active duty time. But that was me. And I spent 30 years teaching here in Lincoln County. I was born and raised in Lincoln County, actually born in Walport, but lived in Taft, which is now part of Lincoln City. So I've been that, and I guess that's it. That's it as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Daron.
Well, geez, everybody's already told a good story. I have several I could tell on Chuck. Built my
He's
first
already
radio.
admitted enough.
Yes, built my first radio kit. I think I was 8 or 9. Was a Lafayette AM tube radio kit, and got started in that and was just fascinated by the technology. I got my license in, I think, 1981. Was a time when you had to go to the FCC office to take the test. And so I was living in Carson City, went to the FCC office in Reno, took my test, went back, took my technician test shortly thereafter, and got started mostly in working with repeaters and how they were set up and built. I did a little work for a two-way radio shop where the guy was a ham also, was generous enough to allow me to work for him for free, and he would teach me, which I thought was a really good deal, and I still appreciate it very much. I got some of the very ugly kind of jobs, installing radios in taxi cabs and things like that, but he was always willing to give me a little used equipment on the side and keep me learning in the hobby. I enjoy the technology part of putting it together and figuring out how to make it work.
Me too.
A lot less. Hey, Joe, don't interrupt. Yes, Joe and I are.
Me.
Joe and I are a lot alike that way. Really enjoy the technology part. I don't need to be on the radio for 6 or 8 hours a day. I'm happy putting things together. Once I put it together and make it work, I'm ready to look for the next project. So I have worked the commander on the International Space Station probably 8 or 10 times. It was a thrill to be able to talk directly with him and get him to say your call back. It was very nice to hear. It was a neat deal, great program. Yeah, I am your practical support. My skills in this, as you'll see later, we'll be putting the parts together and trying to keep the smoke in all the parts. Joe can back me up with the theory and the math about why that works that way. That's not my forte. I will probably burn out 10 or 12 things trying to make it work, and then I'll learn how it works. So if it's theory that you want to learn, pay attention to Joe. If you want to just see how to put it together, I'm happy to show that part.
That's called the smoke test.
The smoke test it is.
Yep. Well, John, KB7KUH.
First of all, you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Let's see. I got into radio in about 1991, 90, something like that. I got my novice tech in general back when code was required. Squeaked by that, and let's see. I let it go for quite a few years here until we had the big fires out here, and I thought, well, we got to get some other communication going. So I kept my license current. I didn't have to ever redo it. So I just set the money in when it expired and just kept it going. But yeah, and since then it's kind of ballooned into satellite work, HF net controls. So yeah, I really love the satellites. It's a challenge to get to them. Like Daron said, the ISS is one of the easier ones, but now you get stomped on. Everybody and their brother's trying to get a contact with it, but especially when the astronauts are active. But it's a lot of fun. I think I've probably got almost 200 satellite contacts, and I really enjoy doing that. Back in the day, I was at ARES. I was actually a district area 4 coordinator, just whatever that was. But when I dropped out and then got back into it, I found the ACS, and I don't know, I just doing a lot of nets. I like traffic nets. I was a Mars, Navy Mars operator, and then they went belly up, I guess. I was kind of sad to hear that, but I really enjoyed passing traffic to our troops. That was awesome. So anyway, I guess that's about it. Love the hobby. It's awesome. Want to get my advanced extra. Boy, I got back in and found out you didn't need to code anymore. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I was robbed. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of nice, great people, and it's just a good hobby to have.
Oh, very good. D, you're next. John, KI6IFA, you're going to be after her.
Oh, should we have Annalise? We're together. Do you want to, is that what you want to do?
Yeah, have Annalise.
Okay, so I'll share. So I've been involved since January 19, 2023. That's today. Long time. So I think the reason is communication, and for emergencies. I think that's my drive, and we'll see how it goes. And Joe, you've seen some of my gadgets.
I have seen, yes.
Okay.
She started to be interested in ham radio, I would say half a year ago. And when she got interested, I got interested. I think amateur radio is just pretty interesting. I like all the facets of it, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know more.
All right. Okay, John.
Name's John Harris. Was interested in ham radio for years and years. As a kid, I was in the Boy Scouts, and you read these stories of how some Boy Scout who knew Morse code saved a family in the middle of a snowstorm by tapping out Morse code on a telegraph wire, that kind of thing. And I was always impressed with what people were doing with amateur radio over a century now. And I got interested again after my wife and I took the CERT training with our neighborhood friends in 2006 in Santa Cruz. And then I heard that the Morse code requirement had been dropped. And I said, all right, now's the time. So I got in touch with the local ham radio club there in Santa Cruz and started studying for the test for a technician. And when I took the test, they said, you want to take the next one? It doesn't cost you any more money and you're here, so why not? So I said, all right. I hadn't studied for the general at all. But somehow I passed the general test. And I don't know how to this day, except I'm a good test taker and I'm intuitive. So anyway, I've been a general since 2007, February 2007, and I have yet to be on HF. Because really HF wasn't my reason for getting into ham radio. It was more the emergency communications aspect and more the local.
People.
Yeah, it's more the local emergency purpose for me. So that brings me to now. I find ham radio to be just absolutely fascinating. One of the things I love about this hobby is you're never ever going to learn it all. So if you want to keep your mind sharp, it's a good thing to learn more about, which is why I'm here. I really need to study up on the general material, and hopefully I'll be able to do that in this class. But as far as moving beyond the general and getting an advanced license, that's not my goal. My goal is just to learn more about radio and about electronics as it applies to radio.
Bill, you're next, and then Prudy.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. My name is Bill Albright. I am very, very new to ham radio. I got my technician license, I think about 2 years ago, and then just got my general, passed the general exam in November of last year. So very, very recent. I have absolutely no experience in radio. I haven't played around with it all my life like many of you have. So why am I doing this? Well, I live in a little community in Depot Bay, and I'm on the safety committee here, which tries to, prepare for events and or emergency events and so forth, and keep people informed of what's going on in our community. So one of my neighbors, who's also a member of the amateur radio club, Ron Pierre, kind of talked me into taking the technician test a few years ago. And I'm pretty good at taking tests. My career has been as an actuary working for insurance companies. And so I've taken actuarial exams, and I learned how to memorize things. So I was able to memorize the 300 or so answers to the questions. Not that I knew what they meant. I probably don't know anything about what they mean, but I know the answer to the question.
And that's what this class is for.
And that's the way I got through the general too. I just memorized the answers and went in, and it wasn't a problem. But I think I'd like to learn what it is I memorized and understand it a little bit better. So my philosophy of learning has always been to surround yourself with people who know a heck of a lot more than you do. So I think I'm in the right place.
Yeah, very good. That's one of the main reasons for this class, because many people take the test and like Bill, they very often just memorize the answers and they get through the test, and afterwards they have no idea what, why they're there. But we're hoping to dispel that in the next 20 weeks. So we will get a break. Prudy, and then Fred will be next.
Okay, like Bill, and much of what you said, Bill, is my story. The timeline was very similar. And I was in a small fishing town. Well, it used to be a fishing town. It's become a tourist town, but the only way you could get out of there to go to a grocery store, like a Fred Meyer or something, would be to take a scary, often one lane road that took a half hour, and usually was one lane because there was a landslide or a tree down, or you'd take a ferry. I volunteered at a radio station every Thursday, so I would take the ferry and then go to Astoria. But the ferry kept breaking. We got a brand new big ferry, and then it just never worked. So, but you wouldn't know that until you drove there. And I had to be on the radio. I had to be there at a certain time, and it just, and you could call the sheriff, but if it were at night, when the other way you could go the long way on the Washington side, which was, it was just, there was no good way to get out of there. And I just decided, I saw an advertisement in the paper and they had a ham radio club at the high school. I'm like, my brother had been a ham and years before. And I thought, there we go. That's how I can always know what's going on. So I went to the first meeting, and knowing nothing about electricity, I still don't know much about electricity. Although today my furnace broke, so I've a lot of the same words, diode, I kind of could follow along. Anyway, they quickly made me a secretary, which was premature, because anytime anybody was talking about stuff, I'd have to call them up after the meeting and they'd have to explain everything to me. But I got my technician license about the time Bill got his. And then right when I moved here and rented my house out there, I started bothering you all with questions and got my general. And by then I had an FT60 and was, and I mean, you can get really hooked. I got hooked hard. So, and Michael, the noontime net here, the net at the house is like, it's like a 1 minute deal. I drove up to the high school, get on the radio, you check in, and then that's it. Boom, you're done. But Michael here, because of COVID, started the thing where noontime net went on for an hour. We all checked in. We wanted to know what everybody was doing. We know the family member, on and on.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
It's been wonderful.
Hi, now you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I tell a little bit about my biography. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I graduated from Memphis State University in electrical engineering back in 1976. And in 1977, I went to Iran and worked about 2 years as an electronics instructor in a 2-year school. I taught basic electricity and electronics. I had got some exposure to radio equipment, not much, but one of my projects was building a power transformer for an air conditioner that worked with 110 volts, and in Iran the line is 220 volts. Then in 1979 December, I because my wife didn't want to live in Iran, she's from Tennessee, I came back to the United States directly to Portland. And I worked for 2 years for Electronics Diversified on lighting control equipment, the controllers of the lighting systems. I got laid off, economy got bad in 1982. Then in 1990, I worked for 2 years for Fujitsu, and my job was troubleshooting the computer disk drives, the mainframe disk drives, both on the component level, the circuit boards, and the head and the disk. And in 1997 to 1999, I worked for Epson in Hillsboro, Oregon. And I did troubleshooting of the circuit boards and also working on assembly line, assembling the printers. And for a couple of months, I worked for, back in, I think it was year 2000, I worked for a couple of months for GE Security Systems in Tualatin, Oregon. And that was about it. It ended my career in electronics. However, in 2001, I started taking one course at a time in mechanical engineering at Portland State University, and I graduated in 2007. And I've not worked as an engineer. I couldn't find a job as an engineer, and that's about it. My interest is in electronics in general, especially high power transmission, and that's about it.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Fred is one of my neighbors, and he's interested in getting his ham ticket, but does not have one. So anyway, David, you're next.
Okay.
And then Scott.
Well, thanks, Joe. I'm David Jameson, KK7EJS. I just got my technician license in March of last year, March of 2022. And I did that primarily, as John mentioned, for emergency communication purposes. I live in Lincoln City, on the north end of Lincoln City, and Rhodes End, and the north end of Rhodes End, which in the event of some sort of disaster will be an island, and thought, well, it'd be nice to talk to somebody from my island if I'm still around to talk. So I did it for that reason in particular. I'm also president of our local CERT, North Lincoln County CERT, Inc. We do GMRS, of course, but I thought this would be another way to increase my communication capability in the event CERT was called out. I suppose I originally got interested in electronics, now that I think about it, was probably a junior in high school. And I didn't do so well in high school. I was not exactly a model student. So the career counselors at that point in time said, you know, we think you're a good candidate for vocational school. I'm like, vocational school? So what are my choices? So they laid out the choices, and I said, I'll take radio and TV repair. So I did that my senior year in high school, radio and TV repair, which then led me to get serious about my education and go on to get a 4-year degree from Miami University in Ohio and a graduate degree from Portland State. And I spent most of my career in enterprise software sales, so selling enterprise software solutions to the federal government, the Department of Defense, large companies, all of that. So that's a little about me.
All right, Scott.
Yeah.
Scott, take your time. John's trying to get back on.
Okay.
You're kind of muffled.
Oh, am I? Well, if you can't hear me, it's because I've got some difficulties, I guess, with my little camera microphone set up, and I'm going to have to get a new one. So just wave at me, shut me off if it's not working good enough. At any rate, I was born and raised in Peoria, Illinois. And when I was a junior at Peoria High School back in 1959, I was attending a high school open house. And as I was walking down those big halls, I could hear echoing down the halls that evening a bunch of dits and dahs and so on. So I followed followed that noise, went down to the high school's electronics and electrical classroom, and I saw Tesla coils, and I saw Jacob's ladders arcing in the open air. And then when those were shut down, I saw kids that were my age talking in it with these microphones into these big boxes that were transmitters and receivers, and they were talking to folks all over the world. And back and then, propagation was really good in those times. At any rate, and they could talk to all people all over the world. They didn't have to have a reason to talk to them or anything. And then they explained that they could also use these for emergencies and so on. And so at any rate, I met a couple of the kids that one of them that lived just 3 or 4 blocks from me, and they kind of mentored me. And then in I think it was 1959, it must have been, became KN9 PMF. And then in 1959, I also a technician K9 PMF, and I couldn't get my Morse code past 8 words per minute, and so I just lived with my technician license. And then I went on to in my senior year in high school. I had a little Hallicrafters radio and a Globe Scout transmitter with a 6146 tube in it. That was up in the bedroom, and it was a lot of fun. I could listen to that stuff and work people. And I had used my grandfather's key in my earphones. He had been a telegrapher on the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad, and I had homemade antennas that I made up. Also, in my senior year, I had extra credits, and so I could take 4 hours a day a course in special training over at Peoria's Manual Training High School. So I'd take the bus over there and work all afternoon. Built those in the 60s, or excuse me, it was early 60. I was able to build a AM 2-meter 400-watt transmitter with the exciter, modulator, dual 4X150A finals, and the power supply, chassis, and cabinets. We had all of that stuff at Manual Training High School where I could build those things. I mean, you could literally delaminate an old transformer from a big TV set, relaminate it, and then wind your coil and so on to make your transformers for those modulation transformers, power transformers, you name it. At any rate, after I'd completed that, then when I graduated, I wanted to go into the military because it was a affordable way to get more electronics training. And so I went into radar maintenance and had a year's training, 8 hours a day. at Keystone Air Force Base in Mississippi, and learned a lot about radar maintenance, and the radio background was really handy for me too. And then I was also, that would make me eligible for a GI Bill when I got out of the Air Force. So after getting out of the Air Force, and by the way, then while I was in the Air Force, I let my ham radio go, and I deferred to the girls and fun cars. That took precedence, I guess. And back in year 2013, I ran across a used radio down at a secondhand store in Florence, and this thing was only about this big, very, very small. I took it home. I bought it for $10, took it home, and hooked it up into my 12-volt power supply, and then hooked the antenna onto my stovepipe on my heater out there out in my garage and ham shack. At any rate, I just couldn't believe what I heard. You could hear stations and amateur radio stations. It wasn't just a VHF fisherman's radio at all, like I thought. It was 80 meters through 80 meters through 10 meters. Just a terrific little rig. Couldn't believe how much amateur radio had changed in 54 years. So at any rate, at a church Bible study, one of the guys there was an amateur radio operator, and he says, "Well, Scott, why don't you think about getting your amateur radio license? Because you don't have to do code anymore." And I said, "Oh, wow, that's great." And so I went ahead and got my technician's license, as my previous technician license was had expired in the 60s. And at any rate, and then a year or two later, I took my general and my extra license, and I really enjoy. I've always liked geography when I was in school. Kind of a nerd that way, I guess. But at any rate, to me, amateur radio was just the next step from being able to actually do a physical trip. You could talk to people all over the world. No need to have a reason for it at all. Just enjoyed talking with people around the world and finding a little bit about what things are like, whether it's in Brazil or Cook Islands or New Zealand or Spain, you name it. It's just a ton of fun, and that's all I can say. I hope you were able to hear me. I know my microphone kind of muffles things.
Thank you, Scott. John, can you turn your?
I could, but Daron informs me that when we speak through your microphone, it shows your image no matter what I do.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well, no,
that's
if
the
you
box.
turn it,
That's the
turn
box
it,
switching part.
if you, oh,
Yes, I mean, I can turn this to where they can be seen, but when they start to talk, it's
going to be
You're in.
nothing like them.
What he's saying is we have to look at you, Joe, while they talk.
I can't turn my camera around.
Or they can.
No, that's fine.
Go up there.
Yeah, you can come up here. Rose.
There you go.
Hello, my name's Rose Jade, and my call is K7SRJ, which are my initials, and I got it. So I felt very accomplished. I'm very new to this. I just got my tech license last fall, and I'm trying to keep on going, and I'm mostly interested in emergency communication. I live in Newport. Thank you.
Very brief.
Camera shy.
That's what I intended to brief by.
Oh, you guys are missing all the fun here in this room. I'm Ann. I'm a volunteer with Red Cross Disaster Services. I'm actually the community engagement lead here for Lincoln County. And Red Cross has asked all of the chapters to see if we can develop some emergency radio communication skills. So we drew straws and I won. So Rose and I were in the same testing event. That was a lot of fun. So I do have my mobile radio. I got it out today. Finally trying to put all the piece parts together. So I'm missing a few cables, so have no excuse. But my husband was working on getting our antenna up. I think he went into overkill because it is now 40 feet in the air and no way to work on it. So we have a few wrinkles to address. But anyway, I'm
40
very.
feet's a good height.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we could be an airport. But let's see. So yeah, so obviously my main interest is in emergency preparedness and communications. I'm very interested to get involved with the ACS group here in Lincoln County. But I have a learning curve to work on. So really happy to have found the club and joined the group here, and interested to meet all of you people in person at some point.
Well, we could probably give your husband a few ideas on what he could do so that he could access that the antennas and so on to maintain them in the future.
Okay, I'm going to switch this over and actually get our meeting started. This took a little longer than I had expected, but I want you to all know each other and know where you're from, what your background is. One of the things we will definitely be covering is emergency communications during this, and how to deal with issues that come up. Because that's, in an emergency, things just quit and you need to be able to figure out what's going on. So it's important to have an understanding.